Correct. Out of practice, so it's good to get another shot at it. Good evening, I'm calling to order the meeting of the Plan Commission study session for May 20th, 2020. Can I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Burleson,
Here.
Ms. Cardona,
Here.
Mr. Gill,
Here.
Mr. Gillette,
Here.
Ms. Little,
Here.
Ms. Woolen,
Here.
Mr. Kennedy,
Here.
Mr. Eberly,
Here.
Mr. Kraus,
One more time, Margaret.
Mr. Kraus. He's got a red mark, so his internet's a little slow.
Okay. Well, we see him.
He's here. Attorney Decker
He's fuzzy now.
Here.
and Mr. Panzik.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. Just a couple of items before we begin. First, I want to thank everybody for their patience as the town and the Plan Commission have gradually started to come back from this pandemic. Just for those that are watching, this is a study session. There's no public comment. There's no public hearing. This is just an educational for the board members. So those that are online listening, this is just for us. We make no decisions tonight. And again, I want to thank everyone for their patience. And as we work through this with this new technology, as we have to approach these meetings, I'll ask you in advance for your patience and understanding if we have any issues with technology as we improve our method of this new normal, I'll call it. So we'll try to take it as slow as possible. Hopefully, everyone is on board with what's going on tonight. So first item we have.
Mr. President, could I just make the announcement that the podium has been sanitized? For those of you that will be up here making a presentation, if you're going to be handling the podium at all, we ask that you use the wipes that are there on the shelf after you're done, so that the next person is sanitized for the next person, or if you just prefer not to touch it at all, then we're good the way we are. That microphone is live. You'll be able to talk into that. Should note also that Jeff Yatsko is participating remotely as well, and he is one of the items on the agenda tonight. But I just wanted to make that announcement about the podium. Thank you, Mr. President.
Oh, very good, very good. All right, next then moving on to the agenda, we have new and old business. Item 3A, the Oak Ridge John Lawton, Tim Kuiper is here representing them. This is plans to introduce RC2 PUD. Mr. Kuiper.
And Mr. Kuiper has the first 4 items on the agenda, so however you'd want to proceed with those, Mr. Kuiper.
If I could, Mr. President, if we could take A, B, and C.
That's perfect.
So it's been 2 months since we've been here. Nothing's changed, obviously, except we went through this interesting 2 months of COVID. So apart from that, nothing's changed. So these first 3 items on the agenda, I'm sorry, are subject to the lawsuit that was filed. There was an original deadline that was extended by the town's attorney twice, and so the new deadline for submissions was this last Monday. So the court has not ruled on anything yet. So the public hearings would have to be continued on this. So clearly it couldn't happen for the June 3rd meeting. So my recommendation, if it's acceptable to the board, is that you continue it again. We bring this up at the study session. I believe it would be June 18th for those first 3 items, A, B, and C.
Okay.
June 17th, I believe, Tim.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Whatever the study session is there.
So then, for those board members, just to clarify, so at our June 3rd meeting, we would then make some sort of recommendation to, I would, hopefully, our attorney Adam Decker would also make some sort of comment at that meeting about a continuance until the legals, it all gets settled. So, okay, that sounds great. Does anyone have any questions for Tim regarding items A, B, or C? Adam, are we missing anything before we move on, or everything sounds good to you?
No, Mr. President, I think Attorney Kuiper has correctly stated the basis for the continuance of those items.
Very good. Thank you, Adam. Then moving on, item D, this is the Gates of St. John. This is Development Plan Unit 22, lots 2249 through 2258. This is a replat from their initial plat.
Yes, on this item, Mr. President, this is a replat of something that was done previously. I believe there's been some discussion and dialogue in between the last 2 months, and this would be ready for public hearing on June 3rd. Again, this is not subject to the lawsuit or any of that. And I can certainly try to answer any questions you may have as to that.
Because this was presented to the board in a study session in February, if I'm not mistaken,
And March, too.
in March.
Yes.
So just for the general public that might be listening, I don't want you to think we are moving too fast on this. I just wanted to clarify, this was brought before, the replatting on item D was brought to the study session in February, and Tim correctly said in March as well. So I think if the board has any questions, and then Adam, I'll just have you interject to make sure that moving forward with the public hearing on June 3rd. So first, board, any questions for Tim? Not hearing anything. Adam? Or do you concur with public hearing on June 3rd?
So, Mr. President, I submit that the board may certainly move this for the hearing, assuming we move forward with the hearing next month, and that those items would be eligible for consideration at that public hearing.
Okay. So you're concurring that, I just want to make sure that, because recommendation last time was to defer, now you're saying we can move forward with the public hearing for item D.
That's correct.
Okay, very good. Any other questions before we let Tim, are you done after this, Tim? Do you have any?
This is my last one, Mr.
All right. Any other questions for Tim before Tim goes? If not, we will see you June 3rd. And then again, with the understanding A, B, and C will be
Correct. Correct.
Con-
As
contin-
we've stated-
based on the recommendation of the board, continue it, and then the understanding that based on our attorney's recommendation, we move forward with public hearing on item number D.
Correct.
All right,
Correct.
very good.
And I didn't touch anything.
Thanks, Tim. Next on the agenda, we have item number E. This is a petitioner is seeking rezoning of 2 acres of his property at 9451 White Oak from open space to R1. Is anyone here representing Mr. Casboni?
Mr. President, I received an email late this afternoon advising me that Mr. Casboni would not be able to make tonight's meeting. He asked that it be deferred from tonight's agenda. I'll need to clarify with him tomorrow that he still plans to be here June 3rd for the public hearing, because the public hearing has been, like all the others, continued automatically because of the COVID situation to the June 3rd meeting, but he was not able to make it this evening. Just to reiterate, this was 2 acres along White Oak Avenue in the 9400 block of White Oak Avenue that he wanted to rezone from open space to R1 single-family residential. It's 2 of his roughly probably 35 acres that his family owns on White Oak. So I do expect him to be here June 3rd, but I will confirm that with him.
Very good. Is there any questions for Rick or anybody regarding this rezoning? I will give you just, this has been, my concern. This is on White Oak, which I believe is a minor arterial. We are requiring 45 feet on each side, 90-foot easements on that road. Our thoroughfare plan calls for to minimize private drives. I think if we rezone this R1, we would be obligated to provide all those lots a driveway. I don't want to, he's taking it from open space to R1, which is great. But at the same time, my concern is conflicts, I'll call them, driveways into that roadway. It is a major I consider it a major north-south street in the town of St. John, so I would like to see a reduction of any drive, or I don't know if we could put a dedicated roadway on there. I know our ordinance calls for two-way access out, but on my way here, I passed 93rd and Columbia, where the Preserves has a cul-de-sac road driveway in. I think we approved a plat, Plan Commission, I know some of us weren't here, but a plat across from Three Springs, which was a one-way in cul-de-sac. I would ask Mr. Casboni to consider that when he gives us a new layout. I'm just concerned with having 4 driveways. He has one there now, but adding 3 more to it. So just to give the board something to consider
No, I
between
fully-
now and when we go to the public hearing. I just want to bring up something to consider as you're looking at this.
No, I feel the same way, John.
So I don't know how far back he owns property. You know, I know we have cul-de-sacs now going back 600 feet. I don't know how deep he goes, if there's a way for him to go that deep. You know, I know the people probably on Hilltop wouldn't want traffic coming in if doing a connection to that point. But if there's a way he could maybe potentially redraw that to have a single access point into his development, it would just put me at a little bit more comfort level than having
One of the things I
multiple
want to
drives.
clarify is, I know he shows it as 4 lots. He's not platting it at this time, he's zoning it. He's asking for a rezoning. But as John and I have had a chance to discuss this a little bit, and if you have some concerns about access, at the rezoning step is where to address this. That's where you have some latitude. Once you zone it R1, all he's got to do is meet the platting requirements, which is minimum 20,000 square foot lots, 100 by 200s roughly. So if you want to apply a condition to the rezoning request that there be a certain number of access points, limited to a certain number of access points, I think that's where you want to do that at the time you're considering the rezoning of the property. So,
And I know he has some wetlands in there, so
right.
I don't know
So
what type
his
of.
property goes all the way from White Oak all the way back here. I will tell you that when he sent out his letters to the adjacent property owners, the calls I received came from these folks over here who want no part of seeing this developed and connecting into their road. Well, the road, that's not happening here, it's not even close. He's looking at this property over here, not anything back here, so they were relieved to hear that. May come to one day, somebody might buy this property and somebody might develop that, and the likelihood is they'd connect right there. That's how it was stubbed, I don't know how many years ago, but it was stubbed for a reason into this property. But these folks have lived with basically a nature preserve here for all these years, and they'd like to see it stay that way. That won't change with what he's planning to do, and if you require some sort of an access road or of such, or frontage road here to service these lots, he's got easily enough land to back that boundary up and create what you may want to see him do without impacting any of these folks over here. This cul-de-sac does dead end here. There's no house here. I suppose it would be physically possible to do this, but these folks wouldn't be happy with that. So, but in any case, he can make the lots a lot deeper than what he's showing them potentially now, if he wanted to do that.
Other questions? Yolanda, I'm sorry if I've gone too fast and didn't give you an opportunity to speak, so just let me know. Next on the agenda, Three Springs Unit 3, request for primary plat extension.
And, Mr. President, Mr. Reddick approached me back in early March about doing this, seeking the 6-month extension to the primary plat for Phase 3, but of course, we haven't met since then, so he's not been able to bring the question to you until this evening's meeting.
Good evening, Doug Reddick with DVG, representing Three Springs Development, and Dave Barrick is here with Three Springs. March of last year, we received our primary plat approval for Phase 3 of Three Springs. We also considered a rezone of part of the property after that, which took some time. Dave's been talking to his bankers, trying to get everything lined up, and then, winter came faster than we thought, so he didn't get a chance to get things started before the weather turned. He does want to get going on the project soon, but we also realized that the one-year approval period had come to an end, so we were here asking for an extension of that one-year primary plat approval.
Any questions from the board to Doug? Rick, can you explain to the board the process and procedures, what?
Certainly. As Mr. Reddick indicated, the primary plat is approved for a period of 12 months. If it hasn't begun within that 12-month period, any petitioner is entitled to come back and ask for an extension. They can get 6-month extensions maximum. There's no limit to the number of extensions a petitioner can request. There's no specific guidance for the Plan Commission on granting or denying an extension, but petitioner, as I say, is entitled to come back and ask for an extension of a primary plat under certain circumstances, and Doug has outlined those reasons for needing the extension.
Then any questions from the board to Doug?
No.
All right.
Oh,
Oh,
he's raising his hand.
with Three Springs, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
You're part of the petitioner, yes, I'll make a comment.
One of the problems we had after we got our approval was, it was a problem because of his time delay. I was asked to come back in, I don't know if you remember, come back in and rezone part of the property. That stopped everything with the bank, okay? So that derailed. Plus the people that were lined up to work, we lost them for their scheduling. So we came back in, Doug redrew this plan like this is the 13th time that we redrew it. And I've got a fortune invested just on this redrawing stuff that he did. So that was a delay, but we did it because we were asked to come in. I don't want to name the person, you probably know who was asking us. We came in, we went through all that, went through all those hoops, and the end result was no. I was kind of upset because why ask me to come in, spend this money, this big time delay, and then end up with the same decision which we already had. That's probably started the ball rolling, So then once we went through that, and we ended up with the same decision that we originally had when we got it in March 6th. Then I personally had to go back to the bank, try to get people online. We just ran out of time. That's what started the problem.
I appreciate the additional information, thank you.
All right, so this will be on the June 3rd agenda for action.
And this is a public hearing.
No, it's not a public hearing,
It is
no.
not a public-
Doesn't require a public hearing, no.
Okay, very good. Anything else for Doug? If not, we'll let you go.
See you in 2
Thank you,
weeks.
Doug. I'll see you next 2 weeks. Next on the agenda, we have Greystone, Unit 2, Block 5 petitioner seeking secondary plat approval. Is this why Jeff's on? Oh.
That's why Jeff has joined us, right?
No, this is Greystone.
No, Walden
You
Cleary.
skipped one.
Oh,
Walden
did I-
Clear.
I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
apologize, sir.
Yeah.
Walden Clearing petitioner is seeking secondary plat of Phase 2 at the June 3rd meeting. And Jeff Yatsko is online. Jeff, any comments?
This is Jeff with Volphoff Homes. We're just seeking final plat approval for 18 lots. It's Phase 2 of Walden Clearing, and this will finish all of the lots on the north side of 93rd. So then we would have one final phase in the future that would finish the last, I believe, 10 lots on the south of 93rd.
Jeff has given cost of improvement numbers, I believe, to Ken for verification, because they're going to have to bond for, I think, most of the improvements. Is that right, Jeff?
Yeah, at this time we have all of the utilities in, so storm, sanitary, and water is completed. We're starting on the roads right after the holiday, but we just won't have them done in time for the June 3rd meeting. So we will go ahead and bond for the roads so that we can get the, we can ask for the plat to be approved on June 3rd. And then once the roads and all the improvements are done, we'd come back then later and ask for that to be turned into a maintenance bond.
I should have a letter out by the end of the week on that, Jeff. I took a look at it. Besides the road, I'm going to also include about half of the soil erosion control measures.
Okay.
And then again, for the board, I'll get a letter from Kenton with a recommendation based on final improvements that need to be done. So we'll read that at the June 3rd meeting. Any questions for Ken and/or Jeff regarding secondary plat approval? All right, thank you, gentlemen. Next on the agenda, all right, I'll get you this time. H, Greystone Unit 2, Block 5 petitioner seeking secondary plat approval.
Michael Tiller with Schilling Development, representing Greystone. We're just requesting final plat. It's our final phase of Unit 2. All the infrastructure is in. The only thing that isn't done is the final surface, which we dropped off the letter of credit in the Mylars on Monday. So just want to get on the June 3rd meeting for final plat.
All right. Ken, any comment?
No, I've taken a look at this one already. And again, I should have a letter out by the end of this week. And had Public Works check it out to make sure that there wasn't any other issues out there that needed to be addressed. And what he said was true. It's just going to be the road surface, and that should cover everything that's left to do.
Very good. Board, any questions? All right, gentlemen, thank you. We'll see you on June 3rd. All right. Next on the agenda, Rick, will I be turning this section over to you? He's finding this very interesting, this stuff. That's, and that hand sanitizer, we got to eat some.
There's a glazed look there.
Yeah. Well, this next section, you're going to see a glazed look right
You're
here.
going to see a lot of glazed looks going into this.
All right, next item on the agenda is the town is moving, the Plan Commission is moving forward with making some recommended changes and to their comp plan ordinance, subdivision control ordinance. This will be a public hearing on June 3rd, correct? The
Yes.
changes?
Yes. it's-
There's been a notice for a public hearing regarding the changes, and if Rick doesn't mind, I will turn it over to him, so you could lead the discussion and then bring it back to the board.
Be happy to do that, Mr. President. You have a copy of the bullet point list of proposed changes to the subdivision control ordinance. I don't plan to go through this document page by page. It's 184 pages, and that would put all of us to sleep pretty short order. But what I wanted to do was open up the draft of the ordinance and go through these suggested changes. And these are a combination of suggestions from Plan Commission members. I know John Gill had given us some suggestions. Bob Davis from Public Works has done that. Ken Kraus and I sat down and discussed it. Others have contributed comments to this subdivision control ordinance. It hasn't been updated since, I believe, '03, as we scroll through well, let me get it over here where you can see it. But as we scroll through the document, you'll see that it's, I hope I can get it over here. There we go. Okay. I think it says it at the heading, at the top of most of the pages, that it's ordinance, 2002, May of 2002. So this is 18 years old. Had a couple of conversations with Doug Reddick. I want to thank him for some of the input he's given me and on some changes to this as well, because we need to look at this from the development side as well as the town's objectives for improving the subdivision control ordinance. So Not sure, I did send out, initially I sent out the first, I believe it was titles 1 through 3, then 4 through 6, and then 7 through 11. And then subsequent to those emails being sent out, I got some additional comments from a number of folks. So I sent out what I'll call the second draft just a couple of days ago, I believe. And in that draft, I highlighted everything in green that was new to the document, so you wouldn't have to try to figure out what was new. The changes I propose are in bold, highlight, and underlined text. Those that we propose to eliminate have strike-through text. Things that I felt like we needed to discuss as a group were highlighted in red. And then, as I say, the green highlights were ones that, suggestions that came after the first after the document was sent out the first time, basically. One of the things that we wanted to change, the first change is on page 17, and that has to do with, whoops, I went way too far. Issuance of building permits. We're not issuing building permits until all improvements are installed, inspected, and approved. In this paragraph, you see that it says, except for final surface asphalt and streetlights. Someone else had suggested that we not issue building permits until even before final surface goes in. And that probably makes sense, as you'll see in a little bit. We've also changed the recommendation. Used to be, actually, the current language says that you put in your binder course of asphalt, and then you have to wait until 80% of the lots are built on before you put on the surface. Well, that's a lot of wear and tear on that binder course. That's where you're going to fail if you're going to fail. The surface course, the wearing course, provides the seal that you need. So in this ordinance, we are now saying that you have to immediately install the surface course of asphalt right after the binder course. So that 80% goes away. So building permits not being issued until the final surface of asphalt is on really is immaterial, because it's got to follow the installation of the binder course anyway. So this language here except for final surface asphalt, I'll strike that, and we'll make sure that the only thing you don't need to have in before you get building permits are the streetlights themselves.
Rick, is there a timeline on when streetlights should be put in, though?
Well,
I mean, that's my concern is there is no sort, I mean, I understand it all depends on the development of the subdivision, but, I mean, is there some sort of guidance when the streetlight should be put in, so it's not 5 years later?
Yeah.
And I'm using hypothetical.
Right. And there's a couple of people better served to address that. I think Bob can probably address that. Doug and perhaps Dave as well from the development standpoint, but it's my understanding that the streetlights are oftentimes the last thing, one of the last things to go in a development. You gentlemen concur? Yeah. Yeah.
But we don't set a time frame on when they need to be in. So you could have all but maybe 2 houses left and no streetlights, potentially, I guess.
Streetlights, it's real dark.
What's that?
When it's real dark and there's no streetlights, you get more theft.
Well, it's just, I don't know if there's a time frame when a developer or the subdivision is required to put streetlights in.
Should it be before the first occupancy of a home, or should there, or just what? I
would think the sooner the better,
because they don't want to restore yards and driveways while they're running the lines.
Right, I would
along
think
the front.
before a house gets final occupancy, the lights should be up.
Just the first house, or?
Yeah.
The first house, the lights
Like
should
a
be.
lot of times in the gates, what I see is, in a new section of the gates where, there's the first house they're putting the foundation in, and I'm out inspecting it, you'll see they've already got the footings in for the base of the lights, and they got the conduit run base to base, and it's just a matter of installing the lights on the concrete base and running the wires, pulling the wires to them.
But they're not obligated to, I mean, they're not obligated to put the light up, though. That's what I'm trying to get
Right.
to.
Yeah,
Do-
no, I
should
agree with you,
we-
there should be some kind of time constraint, and
That,
I
I don't know what the right answer is. I'm
Yeah.
just, there's parts of the,
I agree with what Bob said. I think it should be before the first occupancy, before the first house
First house.
gets an occupancy, which is typically, John, 4 to 5 months after?
6 to 9 months,
6 to
depending.
9, after the issuance of the building permit?
so should we give them a year? I mean, be within 12 months, lights have to be up, or do we just say six? Or do we even need to put, well, we need to put it in there so they know they need to get lights up.
Yeah, because what we don't want to do is hold up the builder or the homeowner because the developer hasn't put in the streetlights. So, yeah, I think we need to clarify that the streetlights have to be energized before the first house is occupied in the given development.
Now, would we hold something until that was satisfied with the lights, or would we just do it on good faith for the installation?
Well, we've got the letter of credit that's going to be in our favor if the lights aren't put in at the time we're approving the secondary plat. So we have a mechanism to put the lights in. That's the only thing I can think of that's a mechanism for us, because again, most of the time, the developer and the builder are not one in the same.
Right, and that's the big thing, is once you sign the Mylars and they record them at county and you start issuing permits, the developer thinks they're home free from doing anything else. So that's really where you hold them up, is if they can't sell the lots and give building permits to the lot buyers, you kind of have more leverage on them, versus once you turn them loose and start giving permits, trying to hold them accountable is a lot harder.
Doug or Dave, what's the hardship if we said streetlights had to be in before a building permit could be issued?
Well, NIPSCO's not in there yet. That's the biggest problem.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of.
So I think a time limit would be even better than the first occupancy. I agree, that would be ideal, but by the first occupancy permit. But like you said, if you have a developer and a builder, you're holding the homeowner, builder, for something that's out of their hands.
Right.
So the letter of credit does address it. It's going to be in the letter of credit for when you go over final plat approval. So you're covered. I say give them 9 months or a year after final plat approval for those lights to begin. That way it's not tied to a builder and a homeowner who has no control whatsoever.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, if you have a response, could you please direct it into the podium microphone so we can have a clear audio? Thank you.
Oh, can you sit closer? I mean, you don't have to stay for this, Doug, but if you're going to.
Do you want me to repeat?
Sure,
No.
go ahead.
So the concern would be, if a homeowner, or I'm sorry, if a builder is building for a homeowner, they have no control over what the developer does. So I think a time limit, like you suggested, 6, 9, 12 months would be more suitable than before the first occupancy permit. So, because it's different people doing different things. You gotta have NIPSCO in there, which would happen during the construction of that first home. So you're gonna be close to the same time frame anyway, but you don't want to burden a homeowner over something like that. They have no control.
So you're saying 6, 9 months after final plat
Exactly.
sign? Okay.
And they would have to bond for it at the final plat stage if they're not in already.
Right.
So
Right.
you're covered.
And I would do a year, because right now it has no time frame.
Yeah.
And then if it's, I've never heard it being an issue, but as I read this, I'm like, well, it doesn't give a time frame on when those streetlights need to be in.
We've had, I think, an instance or two, John, where we've had homes occupied before streetlights have been up, haven't we?
Yeah, I think they were up, but they weren't energized and functional.
That happens.
Yeah,
So that's the
Yeah.
concern I would have too.
Okay.
but I would think the developers would want to do the bulk of the work, trenching along the curb line before there were so many houses, because otherwise you gotta tear out driveways and sod and restore all the
Yeah, that's not
the
good.
features that you disturb to put them in. So that's their incentive, to get them in before there's too many
Too
houses.
many houses.
Just out of curiosity, is it most of the time NIPSCO putting those in, or is that a subcontractor for NIPSCO? Subcontractor, Michael?
Yeah, subcontractor.
Yeah.
NIPSCO used to do them, but not typically in St. John.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
All right, I'll try to move much more quickly than this.
I'm sorry, first item, and
Yeah.
that's not my intent.
We're planning on making a change to the process, the submittal process. We had some language about, we want the developer to come to a staff meeting first, then go to a study session, and then, only then, after the study session, submit an application for a development plan. So we've clarified that in this language on page 27. We have a development review fee. We currently charge 2% of the cost of improvement to the developer for a development review fee. We don't get that money until secondary plat time. We've had some situations where a development has never gotten to secondary plat, and what was the tire store, Bob? Went before the BZA, Levin Tire. Got all the way to secondary plat and stopped.
Yeah.
And we have, I don't know, a couple $1,000s worth of review time that we never collected money for. So the proposal in here is that we have an upfront review fee of $1,500 or $200 a lot, whichever is greater. And then when you get to the 2% stage where you're billing, I'm billing for the 2%, whatever they paid in a plat review fee here gets deducted from that 2%. So it's not an additional cost, you just pay it up front so that we have something to cover our engineering costs at the get-go. And just a change about announcing the public hearing for a petitioner. It's done by the Plan Commission by state law, not the Plan Commission president, so just a couple of minor changes there.
Taking away my power, I see.
Yeah, that's right. We, once John got in that seat, we could see we had to make some changes. And we're requiring digital copies of things instead of hard copies of plats like we used to do. We still have the 30 days. They have to, at least 30 days, they have to submit the drawings to us, but they can be digitally. And then any changes, once they've made the initial submittal, if those get reviewed and need to be changed, those corrected plans still have to be in our hands at least 14 days in advance of any meeting at which a decision is expected. Page 30, we reference some master plans that Ken and I, neither one are aware of, some sanitary and water district master plans that Ken and I are not aware of. Jason just told me before tonight's meeting that he thought we had some, so, and he thought that Ken was working on those about 5 years ago. Ken, can you hear what I'm saying, and do you recall anything about that?
Well, there was some work done for master planning of the sanitary district, but it was for infrastructure, not standards.
Okay, all right.
And
So,
that's how we came up with the plans for lift station number 1. And, that whole, that was multi-million dollars worth of work there.
okay,
But it didn't make any standards. And that's what that, I believe that's what that references to. When
okay.
you're just looking, I can't see what you're looking at, but I
Well-
can hear you.
You don't see the document as I'm scrolling on the screen?
No.
Oh, well, I was told that everybody'd be able to see these. Those of you that are participating remotely, can you not see the subdivision control ordinance that's on the screen?
I can't see it, Rick.
Well, I'm sorry for that. I was told you'd be able to see it.
He's
What
coming
we're
in.
doing is we're comparing, I emailed out the list, the bullet point list to all of you. All right, Jason's here, so help is at hand. I emailed out the bullet point list to you so that you could follow along. And what we're doing is scrolling through the subdivision control ordinance itself and referencing the bullet point list that I have in front of those of us that are here and that I've emailed to those of you participating remotely.
Do you see it now,
Okay, now
Ken?
I can see it, Rick.
Can you see it now?
I can see it now.
We're good.
Jason, is there a way on these screens I can see who just in case if Yolanda needs to speak or Ken needs to speak, is there a way I can see them on here? Just so that if they need to
On
raise their
this?
hand or something like that.
I'd be happy just to
Zoom.
run in, John.
Or you guys are just gonna have to jump in.
Glad to do it.
All right. I just want to make sure you guys aren't reading the comics or, watching something else while we're doing this.
Dozing off.
There you go. All right.
That doesn't have Yolanda yet. She's there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah.
Yeah, she's there. But it'll show the people who speak.
And that's fine. Once they start to speak, they'll pop up on the screen. Perfect. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Jason.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right. So anyway, with regard to the comment on page 32, it was this bolded section here. So we're referring to the IDEM requirements for water and sewer disposal systems, as well as the standards of the town of St. John, and not specifically to master plans of the water and sanitary district, because we're not aware of those. And we go into engineering drawing submittals when, on page 35, let me stop here on page 34. This is where we have a reference to the openings in a residential, basically residential building, but any new construction and openings are defined as doors and windows. They're supposed to be between 18 inches and 24 inches above the curb, but we have situations in town where that's just not possible because of our rolling topography. So we're adding language in the ordinance that allows some deviation from that at the platting level. And that's something that Ken reviews when he's reviewing a plat. He checks the proposed elevations of lots and grading plans. As Doug knows, when he did Castle Rock, there are some that are several feet above the curb, and there's gonna be some below the curb level, I believe. No? There are in Edgewood leading into,
I think we were able to see them.
yeah, yeah.
I would just be concerned with any liability if the door frame is below the curb, just for any drainage of water.
Yeah, and that's bound to happen. I don't know, Dave, do you have any in Three Springs that are below the curb level? Or
We
Michael?
got all good lots there.
Yeah. Michael, do you know of any in the preserve? No? Okay,
We try to avoid those at all costs.
yeah.
Yeah.
Edgewood was 30 years old, so, yeah, that,
It was common back then to have them below the curb.
yeah, yeah. This is where I was talking about the submission engineering drawings, and when they need to be submitted and to whom they need to be submitted. Oops. Change the, as you know, on secondary plats, when we grant a primary plat, like if we do it tonight, the developer wants to come back at the next month's meeting and get a secondary plat approved, the current regulations call for 30-day advance submittal, where there's usually not 30 days between those meetings, there's like 28 days. So we're changing that to 21 days instead of 30 days, just so that if we approve a plat on May 4th, they can, primary plat on May 4th, they can come back June 3rd and get secondary plat if it makes sense, so. Jason had some suggested changes for street address numbers in here. Doggone it. Must be it.
Yeah, they're on page 38.
Yeah, and I'm must have passed it.
Well, item 12. I can read it if you want me to.
Sure, go ahead.
It says, the addition, it's item number 12, it currently says all street numbers, lot numbers, and lot lines with accurate dimensions in feet and hundreds. The new addition calls for addresses shall be numeric only. Additionally, single-family lot addresses shall increase in even increments of 8, i.e. 2000, 2008, 2016. Duplexes or multifamily addresses within the same common wall structure shall increase in even increments of 2, 2000, 2002, but the address numbers for each lot shall increase in increments of 8, as noted previously. That's the addition.
Right.
I think there should be a little wiggle room in there if we come up against a situation where we gotta put them in, say at increments of 6, just so they can fit in to where they need to go. We always run into something nobody thought about when these ordinances are written, and it's always good to have a way out. You could say something, or at the approval of the plan commission, or the engineer, or whoever you wanna put in charge of that.
When you say wiggle room, you're saying allow like between 4 and 8, something like that? Or just
Yeah.
wiggle room in general?
Instead of
This out a little bit, I gotta go
Say
back.
increments of 4, or increments of 6. You never know where you run into, they may have more lots in a block than 8's cover, and you might need a 1 or 2 extra addresses that don't fit in with the 8 increment.
Okay. We're going to take a quick pause here. Rick had to step out for a minute.
What's that?
Boy or girl?
I don't know.
Yolanda,
Yes,
so we're going to put you on public record. Did you have a girl or a boy?
I had a little girl.
Congratulations. What's her name?
Thank you. Her name is Mia Isabella. She was 7 pounds, 4 ounces, 21 inches long, and she likes to cry all night long. So,
So she takes after her mother? No, I'm kidding.
yes, she is a handful for sure. I think her, she just wants to be held. I mean, she wants company. So I'm having a heck of a time, holding her. So yeah, but happy. I couldn't be happier.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Yolanda.
Thank you. Put that on the record that she cries all night. Just
Yeah, no.
to help out.
I made some comments about my home life that I wish I would never have said. No, Margaret takes good care of us. She'll make sure stuff.
My oldest is getting married in October,
Well, congratulations.
Olivia.
Hopefully you'll have a wedding.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Will we move up?
But they'll have a
June 1st, well, you have a wedding.
They'll have a wedding, maybe no reception.
I wonder what Yolanda had to do if she had, because if she had a baby, I wonder if her husband was allowed in the.
Yeah, that's a good question.
went through all the zoning, we're done for the night?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, there's a glitch.
Yolanda was filling us in on our beautiful baby girl, so,
That's good news.
yeah, that's great. Sleep deprived, Yolanda's gonna be at the next meeting.
I was telling my mom that I was ready for the next one, that the pregnancy was great, it was perfect, and then she told me, just wait until you have to take care of her at night, and I agree. It's something else. It's definitely a learning curve for sure.
It's for the young.
Yeah. I wish I could tell you it gets easier, but I got a 16 and a 19-year-old at home, and there's a new type of not sleeping. You don't sleep, you know. They're putting you to bed, but you're waking up if they're not home on time, so.
Yeah.
Okay, that language that John read for us is?
There it is.
There it is. Okay, got it.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
So, Ken, and correct me if I'm wrong, his recommendation was based on providing some sort of leeway for numbering, just in case if we get in a situation where, based on the street, we need to reduce the number
Okay,
by,
so.
by a different, Ken, why don't you explain it again? I apologize.
Ken, can you just get me something in email form on that so I can make any changes to this?
Sure,
Okay,
I'll send it to you tomorrow.
okay, thank you. And then Jason asked that zonings be shown on the plat, on any proposed secondary plat. There, thank you. Oh, yeah, I'll get that back. Okay. Thank you. We've had some language in the ordinance for quite a while about getting certificates of approval or contracts, proof of contracts with NIPSCO or Comcast or AT&T and that type of thing, and that's been in the ordinance since '02. And it was actually in the ordinance back in '90 when I was here the first time, and we just simply don't ask for those kinds of things. I don't think you ever get contracts with utility companies for, you know, AT&T, Comcast, or whatever. So it's something that we're proposing to eliminate the language for. There's a lot of minor stuff in here that I don't want to really take your time with. We do currently charge a minimum review fee of $900. I'm proposing that go to $1,500, sort of in concert with the earlier change as a minimum. This has been in this ordinance since '02, and I think it's time to change that. And if any of you had any questions based on, you know, having reviewed this ahead of time, I'm glad to fast forward through this as much as you want to. I don't know how much time you want to spend on it. Some of the changes were engineering changes, like here. These are items that have to be included in the letter of credit if these improvements aren't in. Right now, we don't include grading and excavating or street signs. We do include street lights and as-built drawings. Those have always been part of the letter of credit. But grading,
Rick, you should
excavating, and street sign.
Keep other.
What, Ken?
Rick, you should also keep other. Do not lose that item. There might be something else that they promised to construct that's not on that list.
All right, and I'll get rid of that strike through. Boy, this is acting finicky. And okay. We have language in here about covenants, and, let's see. In many places, we didn't include, we reference letter of credit, but not a surety bond, and we do accept surety bonds, so we inserted surety bond everywhere it needed to go. Page 46 is where, let's see. Yeah, this is more language in green that we need in the way of as-built, what kind of information we want to see on as-built drawings. For one thing, we want to have the town utilities in color on the drawings, blue for water mains, green for sanitary, pink for storm mains, and just some other information that we'd like to have for our as-built files on any subdivisions going forward. And it doesn't have to be in AutoCAD. One of these days, it'll be some other, and maybe it already is in some other form, I'm not sure, but just electronic version. This is the covenant language that I'm proposing we strike, because we don't enforce covenants in any case. We were trying to restrict how covenants can become invalidated, and I don't think that's any of our business to do that. And as I say, in any case, we don't enforce covenants, so I'd like to get rid of that language altogether. There was some discussion about rebar, and this is in a couple of places, rebar in curbs, and whether, John, I think was that one of your suggestions?
Uh-huh.
Okay, do you want to address that? Let's see if I can find it. It's on page 54.
Yeah, I just think at least where there's cold joints between somebody starting and stopping a curb, you should have some sort of rebar or reinforcement to kind of dowel the two together so they don't wander on you over time, because then once one drops a little bit, that's when the water starts backing up and you get ice in the winter, and that just leads to further deterioration of the road and the curb.
Okay, so that was,
Is that going to be added? Because right now it's just red. And
right, that was the discussion point, so if nobody has an issue with that, and I think that should be added to the language. And it comes up a little bit later as well. There's another place where it's...
Sidewalks, cross sidewalks, I saw that
Yeah.
for the rebar.
Yeah. So if nobody has any objection, we will add that. And I'll make the note here to add it.
Yeah,
and-
rebar or smooth bar.
Okay.
Typically, you put those like when you do the curb gaps
Yeah,
for the
when you
inlets.
stop- Yeah.
Rick, reporting part 3 on page 54, the coloring, I think I'm symmetrical, so I would like the same color, whether it's red for the mat.
Yeah.
The question is, should we mandate a color? I think we should mandate one color.
Yeah, and
It would be
John said
uniform.
his observation is most
It's-
of ours are red.
It's mostly red. There's a few yellow thrown in, because I think one of the neighboring communities, maybe Munster, requires yellow. So then, if the concrete guy has yellow on the truck, that's what he just throws in when he does the
Okay.
sidewalks.
Yeah.
I just think it'd be.
Should be
prefer-
consistent.
Consistent.
Yeah, and I agree with the consistency, yeah.
Okay. And the one just above that in item 2, this is something Paul and I have
sorry.
talked about for a while, but consider requiring sidewalks on major roads to be 8 to 10 foot wide. So they're more like bike paths. Paul, did you have any comment on that?
That would come
Might-
into play.
Might have to use the mic.
Evening. So that would come into play more. A good example that was on the screen tonight was Walden Clearing. So they built along 93rd. It would have been nice if they added 3 more feet of concrete. We'd have an 8-foot path on 93rd. Sidewalks are nice, but a little bit more concrete while you're already building the forms would start putting some puzzle pieces in to actually have some path going down our major arteries, White Oak, 93rd, Klein, that type of thing. So, it's not a requirement at this point, but it's something that should be considered.
Well, should we make it a requirement? Because consideration leaves it up to, is it a standard then? Do we make it a standard on anything above a minor arterial? So then it would be your White Oak, your Klein.
Can we just paraphrase and say sidewalks around the exterior perimeter of a development shall be an additional 3 feet wider than those within the residential area inside? Or something like that?
How do we tie into an existing sidewalk that's only 5 feet? That would, I mean, they would just taper down into
Just
those areas?
taper back
Flare
down.
Just
it,
taper
yeah,
down,
taper it, yeah.
okay. Just don't want some kid riding on a 5 feet, all of a sudden, boom, he's off onto the grass. So, okay, yeah, I would rather consider we either make a decision and we make it a concrete standard that, so
No
there's.
pun intended or pun
No,
intended?
yeah, no pun intended. No, that's my lesson from Adam earlier this year, concrete standards, so.
Yeah.
John, this is Adam Decker. I agree with your comment. This really can only be enforced if it becomes a standard, and if it's only a consideration that does not have the legal effect that I think you're intending to have by making an amendment to the subdivision control ordinance.
Yeah, the only other comment I would say, if this is going to be a multi-use type of facility where you have both pedestrian and bike, is 10 feet wide enough? That would be my only concern. I know we're talking concrete. I know some would say asphalt is better, especially if you're on a bike. But I do like what John Gill has mentioned, that at the exterior of the subdivision would have that requirement. That's a nice touch, and then the interior, so.
Well,
Doug, do you have any, I'm sorry for throwing you out there, but would you have any comment if it's a multi-use facility for bike and pedestrian? Do you think 8 to 10 is a?
That's what we typically see.
Okay, very good, thank you.
so let's pick one, 8 or 10, 8, 9 or 10, but let's pick it.
Don't look.
8.
It's a.
Yeah, just make it 8.
Okay.
Mr. President?
Because 10 might be difficult, with street lights and utility poles and fire hydrants, and might be a nightmare. Manholes.
Minimum 8?
8 foot.
8 foot.
I got 8
Okay.
foot.
And and maybe Rick can work this a little bit more. The exterior of subdivision, I'm just not sure how to compute that, but we do have our thoroughfare plan, which calls out our different street levels. So I wonder if we could tie it to that somehow.
Yeah, we did talk about doing that, yeah.
So that might be, because we're really looking, I mean, we don't want it to be a hardship on a developer and put it in a silly place. But we definitely want to make sure that our major arteries have that connectivity, which will end up connecting the community, the subdivisions.
And that's when I was talking about minor arterial, I think that's a 90-foot, but, some would recommend that we put it on Kyleman Street versus on 41. But Kyleman is a smaller collector.
It's a collector.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's
And
a
you can always
collector, so
waive it
I would
if
be
it-
concerned that if we don't include that,
Right, so however, in the wording might need to be worked on a bit more. And you could always waive it or negotiate at that point. But I agree with Mr. Decker to put it in there and.
Okay.
But definitely maybe tie it to the thoroughfare plan a little bit.
Yep.
Okay. John, also that item 3 there, page 54, the area between sidewalks extended to the curb shall be concrete, not grass or other material that requires maintenance. Bob Davis had a concern about that relative to ADA, and he was concerned that if all that was concrete, would we have to have those warning mats throughout that radius? And I'm not sure, I just don't know the answer.
Yeah, and I think that's I think it's good that they're infilled with concrete, because then when the snow plows cut the corner or push the corner back, there's nothing to
Tear up.
disturb or sod to restore in the spring. But then I think it is problematic, because from how I interpret the ADA code is the detectable warning mats are made to send you across the road, and there should be one to receive you on the other side.
That's correct.
So if your whole radius is infilled with concrete, it could send you at any direction.
Right.
Whereas if you had a straight north and a straight west plate with the grass in between, and you were feeling your way along with a cane, you could see the straight north one, feel it, grass, and then
Right.
see the straight west one and feel it the other. Whereas if it was a full radius, you could go out in the intersection in any direction or angle with no,
Depends on how it's striped too.
Yeah.
If, you know, the direction of the lane goes this way, the sidewalk, and perpendicular, if both of those lines intersect, then you need the truncated domes throughout that whole radius point. If they
Right.
don't, then you only put them in where it's striped at, if it makes,
Crosswalks are.
yes. If it's striped where the two corners meet, then you put the truncated domes all the way on that arc. But if they don't, if there's a gap, then you don't truncate the domes.
Well,
That's how I interpret
Yeah.
it in the ADA.
so does the ADA already take care of this, or do we?
and that's the problem too, is the curb guys go out there and they're putting the curbs in and they
Yeah.
just depress, here and depress there, or they don't depress the whole thing, and then the builder hires his concrete subcontractor to
Right.
fulfill his flat work obligations, and they gotta do with what they were left with. So I think we need to get some kind of standard where when the curb guys are out there, they're leaving a consistent
Right.
depression for the then residential concrete guys to be able to put the truncated dome mats down in the proper
We
way.
stake the depressions when we put the curbs in, so we know where they're supposed to go. And when the depressions are in the right spot, then the sidewalk guys know what to do, and that's where they put the strips, the tackle strips.
So then I guess
We
I'm.
do look at it.
Uh,
We do look at it. when
Okay.
we go.
So what's the answer then? Are we putting concrete in all the way throughout that radius, or are we gonna leave that grass between the two sidewalk sections? I'm not sure that I understand.
Nobody really answered that. It kind of depends on the geometry of the intersection. If it's-
Yeah, because there's some where they don't meet up and you got a huge, you got basically a driveway at the corner, and then there's some where they're real small.
A lot of it factors into it,
So-
so it really could be done either way. I like concrete filled in.
Because then you're not maintaining the grass.
Right, but not necessarily depressed.
Yeah, right.
Directional, east, west, north, south, and then the very radius, center radius should not be depressed, and we can still fill it up concrete.
All right, and it does not have to have a truncated dome then?
No, because it's got the high spot between the
Yeah.
two.
There'd be a height, it'd be a normal
Curb.
Yeah.
curb height.
So,
Mr. President,
So you're,
there was a question. Did Yolanda?
Mr. President,
yes,
it's Margaret. We are having a hard time hearing Doug Reddick. I can hear him talking, but it's very broken.
it's not very
If when he
intelligent what
talks-
he's saying, so I'm
For
kidding.
He's not at the,
Yeah, we're-
he's be at the mic.
Yeah, we're putting him on the spot here,
Those on the
so-
webinar could hear.
We'll try to do it, what I'll try to do is repeat what he's saying in layman's terms, so. All right,
Thank
we
you.
apologize, Margaret.
So we'll require that then to be concrete, the whole radius?
Yeah, I'd say infill it with concrete, but make sure they don't depress the full
Yeah.
radius all the way around when they
Right, got
pour
it.
it.
Not that I like using the term force, but we want to direct people to use the crosswalks. We don't want to.
Correct.
Right. So we want them to,
So I want to eliminate this curb shall be depressed between curb ramps, consistent with the curb ramp depression. That, I need to get rid of that.
Right, it just needs to be depressed in the direction of travel.
Gotcha.
I'd
All
say,
right.
or something like that.
Yeah, all right. Okay. Next comment was on page 58, and it has to do with location of,
I'm sorry, can I go back one?
Sure.
I'm sorry. We were talking about the sidewalks being 8 to 10. being a slow thinker, and Paul brought up the different size of the road classification. Should we, just for the board consideration, based on the size of the road classification, should we determine whether it's an 8 or 10-foot path? Should the major of 41 be 10, minor arterials, or are we making it too complex at that time?
I'd leave it at 8.
Leave it at 8, thank you.
That's my 2 cents.
If anybody else had any comments, but I was just spitballing.
This in red is just, again, a reference to the sanitary sewer master plan and district specifications that we're not sure exist. So we'll chase that down and make that correction. On page 58, there's a, boy, come on. Just a comment that all hydrants need to be outfitted with stores fittings, and that gets repeated throughout the document. It used to be that we tried to require NIPSCO electric to be in rear yard easements, but they took that to court and won, so now they can be in the front yards. We had some valid reasons for not wanting that in the front yards. John has worked on water main breaks where he's had NIPSCO power line over his one shoulder and water standing in a hole full of water, and that's scary. But NIPSCO fought that and won, so they can now be in front yards. Traffic control devices on page 60. Those are to be recommended by the developer's engineer, Doug, these days. Bob Davis and others reported this to me. They'd gone to, I don't know if it was road school or not, but it was mentioned somewhere that the developer's engineer should be doing that. And Doug and I had a conversation about that where he said that you guys, as civil engineers, you have that, that expertise to recommend stop signs, yield signs, whatever.
We do signage plans in a lot of communities, not all.
Yeah.
Is that probably what we call a signage plan, that's what engineering.
Yeah, we used to have that. That was a, something that Public Works, Police, and Fire Department reviewed and made recommendations on. But I guess the law requires an engineer to do that now. So we made that change. And by the way, we're gonna reformat this document so we don't have all these intentionally left blank pages and clean this up. Jason and Margaret are gonna help me do that in terms of formatting it, so it'll be a cleaner looking document when we get our hands on it. Ken and I wanted to make sure we were referencing the current comprehensive or master plan. The language just said the comprehensive plan, so we added that. Added the word wetland to natural features here. Want to make sure that we're recognizing wetlands. We want to reference our current thoroughfare plan and the table urban section standards, which is in that plan. So people know what to do with designing their street systems. Just change the name of the binder course to intermediate course of asphalt. That was a minor change. Here's where we define what an arterial is versus a collector versus minor, those types of things. It's dependent on the right-of-way width. To me, that's a little deceiving because the right-of-way width, for example, for White Oak, I think, I believe the plan is 100 feet, yet the usage, the vehicles per day, don't justify that. So to call it it's a 100-foot right-of-way, so it's something between a collector and an arterial, and it just doesn't carry that kind of traffic today. But this is how we define the streets in town. proposing to extend cul-de-sacs from 400 to 600 feet. That just seems to be more practical. 400 feet seem to be too restrictive. Yeah, you're all for higher, yeah. What, do you have, what's ideal, Doug, do you think?
At least 660.
660?
Up to the developer, Doug would probably say.
We see 660 in a lot of places, which is an eighth of a mile, just to put it in perspective.
I don't have a problem with that. I would defer to people like Doug that design them, so.
Margaret, Doug is recommending
fire,
a 660-foot.
Fire department, they
Cul-de-sac.
were happy with they were okay with 600. I don't know if they're,
Yeah. Mike, is Mike still with us? Mike Gillette? Or John, you can answer that as a fireman. 600 feet, do you find that problematic for a cul-de-sac in terms of fire?
No, shouldn't be.
No? And 660 wouldn't make any difference? No.
No, I don't think so.
okay.
Okay. So there you go, Doug. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure that we were, the spacing of access points, street access points onto an arterial have to be at least 600 feet, and it's measured from center line to center line, so we know where the measuring points are, and as opposed to right-of-way line to right-of-way line. Here's where we have the language about putting the final course of asphalt down immediately after the intermediate or binder course is laid, rather than the 2 years or 80%.
Rick, go back up to the thickness of the pavement.
Sure.
Yeah, it was up. Yeah, a little more, I think. I think a little more. Going, I saw 1.5 inches. Yeah,
Yeah.
1.5 inches. Intermediate.
1.5 inches is the surface.
The
Yeah.
surface.
Yeah.
What's the intermediate?
Intermediate
10
is
inches?
is 2 inch. It's 10 inches of compacted base, 2 inches of binder or intermediate, and 1.5 inches of surface.
And we finding that's holding up with all the traffic and construction equipment?
Yeah, I specifically asked Ken that during our discussions, and Ken, you can add your comments, but you and I discussed this, and you felt the 10 to 1.5 was sufficient?
Yeah, that's a sufficient cross-section for a standard street. We have verbiage elsewhere that says if it's needs heavy duty, then instead of having a 10-inch compacted base, they'll have a 12-inch.
Same asphalt thickness?
Yeah, but again, if it's going to be a real heavily traveled road, then those intermediate and surface thicknesses may have to be bigger, but that would be based on how much traffic is going to be on those roads or how heavy the traffic is.
Okay.
Okay. We get to page 72 is where roundabout language was added in terms of, well, I'm sorry, back up. Bobby Davis asked that we make sure that all dead-end streets have a turnaround sufficient to allow large vehicles to turn around. And I think Mike and John would probably, John Gill, that is, would probably agree with that, having driven fire department vehicles and public works vehicles, that having to turn around at dead
Yep.
ends. So we'll add that to the language.
If that dead-end street is going to be planned to be extended in the future, can we say something like this turnaround only needs to be temporary?
Sure. Yeah. I'll make a note on my sheet here. Okay. there's language in here that in green regarding roundabouts, that reflects the language of an ordinance that was adopted a few years ago and just has some standards for roundabout design.
Where'd we get these from?
Ken, are you aware where we got these from, or was that done during your hiatus?
That was done during my hiatus, but I think it came about for the roundabout that's by the Catholic Church. And I think they wrote this ordinance around that particular roundabout.
I'm just wondering if we should use like an NDOT standard versus creating our own. I know these are for
Possible.
subdivisions.
Yeah.
I know these might be a little bit smaller than NDOT certified, but I don't know why I'm trying to recreate the wheel.
This is a pretty big roundabout.
So I wonder if we just put any roundabouts.
Well, Ken had a comment.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ken.
Go ahead, Ken.
So this is a pretty big roundabout, this one here. A lot of the existing ones in the county are a lot smaller than this one. But the thing I don't like about this particular description of the roundabout is everything is nailed down, to the half a foot of all these dimensions. And we're going to run into situations that either this is too big for the purpose it's going to be used, or there's several different kinds of roundabouts that can be used that have different dimensions for them.
Right.
And there's no out on this. I mean, you put this one in and that's it, the way this reads. And there's no, we'll call it leeway.
That's why I was just wondering if, I'm sorry, Ken, that's why I was just wondering if we could just use whatever NDOT standards are used for their specification for roundabouts. Just might be.
Yeah, but, it goes to design standards, not construction standards.
Well, remember that this is in the subdivision control ordinance that you can seek a waiver from. So that can be a waiver, but if we need to change something in there, Ken, I know you and a couple of these changes are in here because you recommended like 64 instead of 65 and a half, 24-inch depressed curb instead of an 18-inch, and Central Island's having a 10-foot wide concrete apron adjacent to the depressed curb and gutter. But if there's other changes that need to be made, then now's the time to make them, between now and the public hearing, certainly.
Yeah.
So is that something, Ken, you want to look at and get me some comments on?
Yeah, I'll take another look at it. I read over, most of this came out of the ordinance the town already has.
Right.
I had made a copy of it and threw it in my subdivision control ordinance so I had easy reference to it. And I just noticed that some of these things, they just don't build them that way. So that's the changes that I put in there.
I'm sorry, Ken, can you speak up a little bit? We got a train, we're going by.
Is there no way to turn up the volume?
No. I asked Jason, it's at its maximum.
We're just
So
having.
Ken, you'll review this again and give me any suggested changes that I can get out to the members before the next meeting?
Certainly.
All right.
Thank you.
Page 74 is where we have the repeated language about rebar.
Yeah.
Minimize curb settlement. So I think we've already addressed that. This is where we've got some sidewalk standards, and I think, again, this was, John, I think you made the comment about the welded wire fabric. Was that yours or was that Ken's?
I think that was Ken's.
Ken's.
No, that wasn't mine.
Maybe it was me then.
Usually we don't put it in unless it's in a place where, like a driveway crossing.
Yeah, I think we could go with fiber mesh actually too, would be less labor intensive and provide the same reinforcement. And most guys are pouring fiber mesh for everything anyway nowadays.
Are you pouring thicker sidewalk across the drives, or are you keeping it the same thickness? Thicker.
Yeah, thicker in the drives.
Yeah. Or fiber mesh, you said?
Yeah.
All right, got it.
Does it say what thickness at the drives?
Yeah, 6 inch and
Oh,
stuff.
okay.
for-
Oh, no, I see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, 6 inch.
Yeah.
Okay, and some of this is the same language as we had above, so I'll make the same corrections to this. Now, John, was that comment in red, was that yours, or I'm not sure where that came from?
Yeah, that was mine, yeah.
All right, do we need to require rebar in sidewalks where there are B-box and sewer taps going from the street to the buildings? And if that's your recommendation, I mean, I don't know what anybody thinks.
Yeah, I don't,
Yeah, I mean,
it's not gonna hurt it.
Yeah, it's not gonna hurt to throw 2 bars across, you know,
Alright.
2 or 3 bars across wherever the trench is. That way if the trench settles, the sidewalk's not gonna buckle.
All right,
The pipe underneath, yeah.
got it.
Do you require a stamp where, like, on the curb where the water
They
service?
notch the curbs, yeah,
Okay.
where it is.
We skipped to page 80. There's some fire hydrant. And by the way, Mike Gillette had an excellent suggestion, but it's something that doesn't really fit in the subdivision control ordinance, but as a fireman, he would like to see the top nut on the fire hydrants color-coded to indicate the flow rate, so they know what the best hydrant is to hook up to. And I discussed that with Bobby Davis, and he agrees with that, but he said that's really something that the town or the fire department itself should go out and do in terms of marking our hydrants.
And we did do that years ago when we painted our fire hydrants silver. We
Yeah.
painted the caps color-coded corresponding with the flow.
Okay.
And
So
that was
that-
in
Test them
around
and.
2007,
and
I
then
think
paint 'em.
we did all that, and then we went back to red a few years later.
Yeah. But it's a great suggestion. It just, it's not something that would be incumbent upon a developer to do.
Right.
It's something we need to do. Bobby tells me that all fire hydrants are supposed to be made in the USA, so I don't know. I have no idea, but that's where that comment came from.
Sounds like a good idea.
NDOT jobs, they
Yeah.
require
Made in America.
made in America.
And we require East Jordan anyway, which is made in East Jordan, Michigan, so.
And Bobby did provide me with a spec sheet for the type of street lighting control cabinet that we want, so we'll insert that at this location. We're getting up to a couple of things that we discussed as a plan commission that we really wanted to do, and I just passed
Oh,
it.
I'm sorry, Rick,
ahead.
real quick, page 82, since we increased the cul-de-sac to 660, do we want to move the light to 660 as well, or leave it at 600? I guess 600 is fine. I just didn't know if that number was tied to the 600 of a cul-de-sac.
Well, the cul-de-sac was 400 before, so it's not, I don't think it
Oh,
was ever
okay.
tied to the cul-de-sac.
Very good, okay.
Here's where we're requiring that, we're allowing lots to continue to be platted into detention or retention ponds, but you can't take credit for that portion of the lot that is in the ponds to meet your minimum lot sizes. So you have to meet minimum lot size outside of a detention or retention pond. And for a detention pond doesn't have, that's a dry bottom pond, that does not have a normal water or high water level. A retention pond will. We don't specify here that it's got to be outside of a water level, but I don't know. Anybody have any thoughts about that? Doug, you have any thoughts about, should it be from a normal water level or high water level from a retention pond?
Definitely high water.
Yeah. If we're going to specify a level at all?
Yeah,
Or-
I'd say.
But
high
the
water.
easement line would cover the high water line anyway, so,
Okay.
so
So-
we don't
Gotcha,
typically let the
gotcha.
water go past the easement line anyway.
All right, gotcha, okay. Now, we're also saying that you the next sentence says, nor shall compliance with minimum lot sizes include any portion of a lot that extends into a major utility easement such as a pipeline, electric transmission line, drainage easement, or the like. And I picked this number, it could be something else, but major utility easement shall mean a utility easement that is larger than 25 feet in width. Thoughts or comments about that? Again, we just didn't want the lot to
Right.
be able to take in, one of these big electric transmission lines that's 140 feet deep and take credit for that.
No, it sounds good,
Yeah.
what you have.
Come on, where's my, there we go. We've got some language here in the corner lots. We say that corner lots shall be platted at least 20% wider than the minimum lot width required, that's okay. But setback lines at the front yard setback distance along each street shall be at the front yard setback distance along each street, and that conflicts with the language in the zoning ordinance in chapters 5, 6, and 7, where it specifies a corner setback lot as an example.
Setback line shall be
Yeah, side yard of 25 feet on an R1 lot, on a corner lot. Well, here you're saying that the setback line shall be at the front yard setback distance along each street, which could be as much as 40 feet. So in residential zoning districts, we allow a floating front building line of 25 to 40 feet. But the standard is 40 feet. So here in the subdivision control ordinance, we're saying that corner lots have to have the front yard setback and the side yard setback on the corner have to be the same. In the zoning ordinance, we don't say that. They're two different numbers, so I think the setback should be determined in the zoning ordinance, not the subdivision control ordinance. So I would be of a mind to strike this setback line language in the subdivision control ordinance, and just let the zoning ordinance rule.
That's
Anybody have an issue with that? Okay. Sounds good.
fine by me.
All right, so then we get into our pipeline impact area, which, many thanks to Adam Decker for refining this language for us. And that's all this language in green. The idea is we want to, and I guess with apologies to Dave, this is what I'll call the Three Springs language. We're trying to make it as safe as we can for development next to pipelines. So we've created what's called a pipeline impact area, and we're calling that 50 feet on either side of a pipeline easement. And what we're doing essentially is saying that the pipeline impact area can be on a lot, but the edge of the pipeline impact area is going to be the point from which we're going to measure setbacks for that lot. So if you've got a regular rectangular lot and that pipeline impact area comes in 50 feet on its side, then the setback line is another 10 feet from that. So the lot's going to have to be big enough to be able to accommodate the pipeline impact area as well as the setbacks. So, for example, if you had a typical 100 by 200 foot lot and that pipeline impact area came in 50 feet and you got two 10-foot setbacks that you have to comply with besides that, that's 70 feet out of the 100-foot wide lot. That's not going to work. That lot's going to have to be wider in order to accommodate the pipeline impact area. So that's where this language comes in. So you can have a pipeline impact area on the lot, but it's got to be large enough to build a home on essentially. Are you following what I'm saying there, Doug?
I'm not following you on that one.
Okay.
Can you,
So like how I'm looking at this, any lot adjacent to a major pipeline would have to almost be, you wouldn't do it parallel to the pipeline, you would do it perpendicular. Because you can't physically build a house on a lot that runs parallel with the easement.
Oh, no, I
You
think
could.
you could.
Unless it was wide, it was 150
Oh,
feet
that's
wide.
right,
yeah.
you could do a very wide lot.
Yeah, because then
That's
you
right,
shove
that's
it
right.
all over.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Paul. We
Paul.
can use some clarity, yeah.
I get you now.
If you read bullet point 2 first, I think it makes more sense.
Okay, so any lot created in one of those districts shall have at minimum, the minimum lot area for such applicable zoning district located entirely outside the pipeline impact area. So, I understand what Paul's saying, so, here's the thing. We anticipate that the pipeline easement is going to be right adjacent to a given property line, whether it's a side yard or a rear yard. Unlikely it would be a front yard, but side or rear yard. So from the edge of the pipeline easement, there's a 50-foot impact area that we don't want a structure.
So that would basically move your property line to the edge of that 50 feet.
And then you
So
start.
if the pipeline's on the back.
Setback line.
Your
then you-
setback line.
Yeah, then you pull off that instead of the rear property line for your setbacks or your side property lines.
Yeah, that's,
work for us, Doug?
So,
Doug's saying.
if I may, Mr. President?
Yep.
There's 2 points here that it'll make it easier to comprehend. So any minimum size lot, if you got a 20,000 square foot lot in R1, it can't be on the easement, it can't be within 50 feet of the easement. That minimum lot size has to stand independent of the impact zone. And the impact zone is a 50-foot wide on either side of the easement. So if it's a minimum size lot, it can't have any of that impact zone within it. If it's a 5-acre lot, that's where the language that Rick first mentioned comes in. So if it's a gigantic lot, you can have that impact zone in the lot, but now you're going to use the edge of that impact zone for your setbacks, as if it was almost like would have been the property line, but it's not. It's within the property, if that makes sense. So for the really large lots, you're going to have, your setbacks are going to start at that impact zone. So you'll be able to have it within a lot that's way over the minimum size. Does that make sense? So it took a lot of legal wrangling to get through this.
But Dave, this doesn't apply to Three Springs. This is going forward. This is after this thing gets
That
developed.
was my next question.
Yeah, it's
So-
not retroactive.
Grandfathered in with our project, and if we came with you another project, it would apply to that.
Right, right.
So in general, in most day-to-day use for the plan commission, your lots, your minimum size lots, cannot touch that impact zone. And that impact zone is like this buffer.
Your
around-
lots or your setbacks?
Your lots.
Your lots.
So that's why I wanted to start with
So
number
who's
2
gonna own
first.
that? Who's gonna maintain that lot then? Or,
That'll be up to a developer. That would be a outlot, whatever they want to do with it.
Oh,
So,
okay.
Yeah, so
Well-
the minimum lot size cannot be within that impact area.
Okay.
Well, let me say this. It actually works on a rear yard. If a lot is deep enough, if you have a 100 by 200 foot lot, typical R1 lot, and you have the easement right up against the rear property line of that lot, so you come in 50 feet with a pipeline impact area, you need another 40-foot rear yard setback from that, so now you're 90 feet into the lot. You've got a 40-foot front yard setback, so now you've got 130 feet of a 200-foot deep lot eaten up, but you have 70 feet left to build in.
But you
You can build in that.
or a 25-foot front.
Or a 25, if you have a 25 to 40-foot front yard setback. So you have 70 to 85 feet of depth to build in on a 200-foot deep lot, even with the 50-foot pipeline impact area on the lot. It's the width where you can't make it work. A standard 100-foot like John said, you're gonna have to have a 150-foot wide lot, in order to have 50 feet of it be impact area. But the depth can handle it.
So that contradicts bullet point 2. Bullet point 2 says our minimum lot area for any zoning district just stands alone, period. So the whole idea was if you had a minimum size lot, like you're Kilkenny, right? You get an R1 lot, you wouldn't have to worry about that impact zone being anywhere on your lot. So it's just, you could auger into the ground anywhere and you're not going to hit it, or even come close to it, even remotely close to it. And the impact area has to do with some other safety factors as well. So Adam worded that just to, create a buffer.
So per Rick's description, say it's a 100 by 200, a standardized R1 lot, you cannot include that 50-foot
Not
As your lot.
Not as
as
bullet
part
point
of
number
your
2.
Lot.
R1 lot.
Right.
As part of
Your
your
square
lot.
footage.
Yeah, if it was over 20,000 square foot, now you can start to encroach on that. So a minimum lot size, though, cannot have any of the impact area on
So
it.
to have just R1 lot in that area, actually, you would need a 100 by 250-foot lot to even qualify for R, or in some format or dimension of that, so you would actually need a 25,000 square foot lot in any area around a pipeline.
So the idea is you have your easement of and this is for major, and the verbiage was in there, this is for major pipelines and of such we have in town. So you have your easement, you'll have a 50-foot wide swath on either side of it that will not be included in any minimum size lots.
So that would not be the responsibility of the homeowner or landowner.
Not unless they wanted to plat it creatively and make a lot bigger than minimum size.
That's correct.
And then that's when the other language kicks in about the building setbacks.
Right.
Starting at, so you treat that impact area as off limits. They couldn't be, the impact area cannot be a portion of the setbacks. Correct.
Right.
Or a portion of the lot.
Right.
It could be a portion of the lot if it's
If it's
larger
big
than
enough.
minimum size. Right. So if it was a 2-acre lot.
Right.
It could be on the lot, but you can't use that as part of your setback.
But, right, so you basically have to add 50 feet in width or depth
Okay.
to a standard lot in order to make it work. Yeah.
Who came up with the 50 feet, or did you hire some company, or?
Well, and Adam can address this, but Adam Decker did some research for us, our Plan Commission attorney, and I think he saw that number that other communities have used. Adam, do you have a comment on that?
So my research.
Adam, I'm sorry, if there's any way you can speak up, that'd be great. The volume's very low, or,
Okay, can you hear me?
right now we can.
Hello?
Yeah.
You cannot hear me.
No, we're good, but it's very low.
It's the problem's on our end,
I
Adam.
think it's on this side.
It's on our end, but just do what best you can to speak up.
Okay. So in my research of other communities that have adopted these standards, many of them have.
No.
Adam, we're having a
Losing
little issue with the
connection.
connection.
Okay.
Jason's coming in, hold on. There you go, put some speakers.
This is theoretical, this may not work.
Yeah. Well,
Give us just a minute to set up some speakers, Adam.
Okay.
where's the sound coming from, the mic?
Well, there's speakers in the ceiling, but I'm only hearing it from like way back here someplace.
It sounds like it's coming out of the podium for me. Okay.
Excuse me?
Yep.
Their outlets are never around when you need them.
Can you hear me now?
A lot better.
Oh, a lot better.
So this is Adam Decker. In my research of other community standards, I found that those communities sometimes employed a formula calculation to determine the impact area. And that calculation was based in part on the diameter of the pipeline and the pressure in that pipeline. So rather than utilizing that formula to calculate the minimum impact area, and by the way, that calculation was promulgated by the Department of Transportation as a standard in really determining that impact area. Rather than doing that, we took a very minimum, a fairly conservative approach in establishing that at 50 feet. It's really intended to be a safeguard against possible construction activities by a homeowner, and really to try to establish that minimum setback. The towns that have used the formula, sometimes I've found out that can establish an impact area of several hundred feet. And certainly, I don't think that was the intention by establishing these minimum setbacks. So it was a fairly conservative approach after having evaluated what other communities have done, and also looking at the formula that other communities have employed in their ordinances.
Adam, if I missed this in your comments, so do we determine the impact of the pipeline? So if NIPSCO has a natural gas line, is that automatically included in this pipeline impact area? Or do we set a minimum standard of how much pressure these lines have?
We do. There will be also in the zoning ordinance the definition of a transmission pipeline. And so I believe as it's currently written, and Rick and I talked about this, I think the minimum right now is 200 pounds per square inch. My research indicates that the pipeline that is in St. John, the Vectron pipeline, probably operates well above that pressure. Typically, transmission pipelines might operate in the area of 500 to perhaps even 800 or 900 pounds per square inch. So in defining what a transmission pipeline is, I think we established that it would have a certain minimum pipeline diameter as well as a certain minimum pressure. And I don't have that. I think we established that at 200 pounds per square inch.
That's correct, Adam.
Distribution line for NIPSCO would not be considered a transmission pipeline.
And then just one other question. It seems then that any lot or subdivision along a transmission pipeline would automatically have to be R1 or larger. Does that put us in a predicament where someone can come back and say, you don't give us the option to be R2, R1? Or can we, I just didn't know if we have to allow somebody the option to become R2 or a different type of zoning classification. If that makes sense, I'm sorry. I'm just saying, are we limiting people the option? Because it almost sounds that they have to be a minimum of R1.
Well, if they're adjacent to a pipeline.
They have to be.
They may well have to be, yes, but that doesn't mean all the lots have to be, so.
But I'm just saying, do we put ourselves in a situation where a developer could say, state law requires you to give us the option to have an option to request an R2. This is almost limiting their options. I don't know if that's the case.
Rick, go back to bullet point 2, if you don't mind. Mr. President, this applies for any minimum lot in any zoning standard, district. So it could be R2, R3, it doesn't matter, it just can't be in the impact zone. So you could have an R3 lot next to the impact zone, you just can't count the impact zone as part of the lot. You have to have that minimum lot size, whatever the zoning district might be, not be part of the impact zone.
I see what, okay, no.
So we're just trying to, if you're gonna go with the minimum lot, it has to be
Outside that impact.
outside the impact zone.
I'm-
Yep. So we're just trying to create that safe barrier and, as Mr. Decker described.
Because I'm going back to how Rick explained it, that 50 feet could be within a lot. It cannot. It's
Right.
outside that minimum.
So this even applies to commercial. So if somebody comes to town and builds a hospital, it can't be 10 foot away from the line or 15 foot away from the line. It's got to have that minimum impact area for human activity.
Gotcha.
Right. And by the way, I sort of jokingly referred to this as the Three Springs language, but Three Springs is not the only subdivision that is, we have several subdivisions where we have pipelines in the middle, right next to residential properties, so it's certainly not just Dave's Three Springs subdivision. We do. Greystone is one of them, and.
Why can't you just have it R2 next to this pipeline while you're shoving the R1 down? People don't like the big lots. If you do R2, it's only 150 foot, and that gives you that 50-foot extra distance.
In a lot depth, it does, yeah, I see what you're saying.
That would be more fair to everybody, instead of saying you now gotta have a 250 foot.
No,
No, I
no, they're
think,
not saying that. That's how I'm assuming it.
sounds like you can have any kind of zoning.
You can.
It just.
You just gotta be 50 feet away
Gotta be
from whatever
50
it's
foot
starting.
from that easement line,
Yeah.
and you can have any zoning you want,
Yeah.
or choose,
Okay.
or approve.
Rick, just
Go
for
ahead.
clarification, you want the 50-foot impact zone, so that's just measured from the easement line of the pipeline, and then in addition to that, you want the typical setbacks.
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 Yes. Mhm.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, so it's the pipeline impact area plus the setback. Yeah.
And you understand, a lot of times, the pipeline is 30, 40 feet from that easement line.
Right, but yes, I do. So it could be, you might be 110 feet away from the pipe itself, but that pipe can always, when they replace it, like they did when they went through, was it the gates, John, that they replaced the line?
They did the gates and Grace.
They could be right up against that
They
easement.
can, you can move from this edge of it to this edge of the easement. So, yeah, I do, Doug. I know what you're saying, but yeah.
Okay, I just want
Yeah.
clarification.
Yeah. Page 88, this in red, we make the comment, this is in commercial areas, such construction shall apply to all development, let's see. Oh, yeah, all commercial buildings shall be constructed to be integrated and developed like other nearby and surrounding buildings. We've got some legacy commercial buildings that maybe we don't necessarily want to continue that construction style, and I'm just not sure we want to have that language. I don't know why
I would agree.
yeah. I would propose to strike it.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to have that. Because particularly with the overlay.
Puts you in a
district.
corner.
Yeah, it does. It makes you build
Puts you in a
everything-
box.
Yeah. And if it's
If it's an ugly building,
Yeah.
why do we want to
why do we
continue?
want to perpetuate that? Yeah. Yeah. Good night, guys. Thanks
Good
for
night.
staying.
Thanks.
Okay. Sorry, this thing is just really finicky. There, okay. Page 90, this comes into some PUD language that come on. We've got this sentence that starts here, the planned unit development provision is intended to encourage original and imaginative subdivision design which preserves the natural amenities of the site and provides for the general welfare of the town. That's similar to language that we have in Chapter 9 of the zoning ordinance where we encourage imaginative design, And in the zoning ordinance, that immediately follows language that says that the PUD shall be an economical and efficient system of streets and utilities. So to me, that's conflicting language. We're telling them in one point they have to be economical and efficient. In another, we're encouraging imaginative subdivision design. And I think what we want is the imaginative subdivision design. So to me, we've got to eliminate the conflicting language that we have. In any case, it's not a standard, even though right here, it's in design standards. This is a goal, it's an objective, it's not a measurable standard. And as Adam has counseled us several times, standards should be concrete standards that we can measure something against. So I think when we get to this zoning ordinance, which we'll tackle after this, after we're done with subdivision control, we need to take that conflicting language out. I like this that says it should be original and imaginative, but what's original and imaginative to Bob may not be to me and vice versa. It's just not a measurable standard.
No.
Then we've got some conflicts again with the zoning ordinance. The area of land to be developed shall be not less than 10 acres. We require commercial PUDs to be at least 20 acres. So we've got to clean that up.
Right.
Whichever we think it should be. And we have a restriction on residential too. It's got to be a certain number of acres, so we need to consider that. And Paul, this next one is the one you and I talked about the other day about the location of an easement. What I hear in the second sentence, easement shall be at least 12 feet wide, and it currently says shall be located along the rear or side lot lines. Again, now that we know NIPSCO can be in the front yards, and sometimes our utilities are in actual front yard easements as opposed to the rights-of-way or parkways, I'm just saying they should be located along rear or side lot lines, but we know there's occasions where they're going to be along front yards as well. Paul's concern about this, and he can comment on it, was that they should be along lot lines in any case, as opposed to, say, just down the middle of a lot. I can think of one place in particular where there's a 15-foot easement that is 13 feet off the rear property line. So there's 13 feet between the easement and the rear property line.
Doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So, and I think that's what you meant, Paul. They should be adjacent to a property line.
Parallel or adjacent or.
I have, Adam could probably clean up the language, but it might be as simple as shall be on the outer lot line and should be on the, we would prefer it to be on the side or rear, but shall be on the outer perimeter. So whether it's front, side, or rear, don't let them come a third of the way into the lot and
Right.
interrupt the backyard or front yard.
Makes
So-
sense. Do we want to put 6 by 6? Could it be 8 by 4? Depending on or do we want it 6 by 6? Does that?
Usually they're symmetrical on both
Yeah.
sides of the
Okay,
line.
very good, perfect.
And Mr. Eberly, on that last item that you went through of the PUD,
Yes, sure.
I just would suggest to the board, the commission, they may recommend eliminating item C because it seems to be a zoning ordinance matter. Usually when we talk about size of anything or set, like those type of things, that's a zoning ordinance. As you said, it conflicts because each zoning district has different minimum lot standards.
Right.
So I think that's handled by that.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion, Paul. So I'll cross that out.
So in the zoning, it's 20, in here it's 10.
Yeah.
So then if we eliminate this, then we automatically go up to a 10, or 20.
We just use the language in the zoning ordinance. Yeah.
The zoning ordinance will cover it because it covers the minimum size for each district already, so.
Yep, good observation. All right, so easement language, so shall.
Rick, you also need to have something in there in case the easement is in the front yard, which happens quite often nowadays.
Well, that's why I have the should language in there, Ken, so that we prefer it to be alongside or rear lot lines, but eliminating the word shall and replacing it with should now allows a front yard easement. Am I missing something? We're encouraging side and rear yard easements, but we're not mandating them anymore. Next one was on page, go ahead.
They could be bigger than 12 feet wide, so that last sentence should say at least or minimum 12 feet side easement.
Yep.
This is Adam Decker. If should replaces the word shall, then might the easement be located somewhere other than the rear or side lot line?
Well, that's what Paul said, Adam. He said,
Yeah.
he said we need to have language that says the easement shall be on the perimeter of the lot, but,
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah. And,
Should be.
yeah, should be in the side or rear, but we know that there'll be
But it-
situations where that we'll have some front yard easements. So,
But it shall be on the perimeter of the.
right, correct, and I'll make that change.
Thank you.
And minimum.
And that last sentence is just an example. The one that precedes it, easements shall be at least 12 feet wide. And then that last sentence is easements can be split between adjacent lots, for example, 6 feet on each side, each lot such that side by side, those 6 feet easements combine to make a 12-foot side easement. So that's just an example, but they have to be at least 12 feet. So if they're 16 feet, then you'd have 8 feet on each lot. Page 94, it's just our manholes are supposed to be imprinted with Town of St. John on them and need to be made in the USA. Now, John, is that another thing?
Yeah, that's from East Jordan as
East
well.
Jordan as well? All right. Page 98 and 100, we don't have a sanitary board engineer or a water board engineer. We have a town engineer, so eliminated that. 104 was another one of these things where we treat it as a standard when it's not. I'll get to it in a second. Come on. Oops. Again, this is here under design standards, and it is a goal or an objective. It's encouraging ensuring that the proposed subdivision meets health, safety, morals, comfort, prosperity, and all of that in that language, and that's not a measurable standard. In addition to that, we already cover that in the findings of fact that that the Plan Commission acts on. All that language is in there, that it has to be, promote the health, safety, morals, comfort, and welfare, general welfare of the town, so I'm just saying that it's not a standard, so it shouldn't be in here as a standard.
Yeah.
I think I need a mouse pad over here.
That's better. Yeah, maybe we can.
This next section gets into specifically some engineering changes that Ken contributed to. Just a comment here that the master drainage plan shall be approved by our town engineer. It had this language in it that just wasn't necessary. We can just simply say that it has to be approved by the engineer.
Yeah.
And are we adding the 2-year storm on page 106? Was this a discussion point as a prior metric to determine stormwater rate?
Where was it? Oh, you see that, Ken? Item D? Can you see that?
Yes, I see it.
All right, would you read that a second and see? I had the question there, do we need to specify the flow rate of a certain rain event? And we might do that somewhere else.
Yeah, we do that somewhere else too. That'll be in the design standards for the various different things. The 2-year rate applies to the release rate of a detention or retention basin. The storm sewers themselves have to be designed for a 5-year storm. Culverts have to be for a 50-year storm, and then you have a 100-year storm storage rate for detention basins and overland flows. So,
All right.
and that's all described elsewhere.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Thanks, John, for catching
No,
that.
not, and if the board doesn't mind, if we want to jump to page, in section 3, it is all just talking about using industry-recognized computer programs. That's really most of the changes in section 3. That's from page 112 to, I think, 24, unless anybody looked at anything that recognized that we need to address it, but it just, I think we're just trying to set some metrics.
Yeah.
So if we want to,
That's all engineering stuff that Ken recommended, and.
so if we want to move to 124, if everyone's good with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Appreciate all your good work, Ken, but we're glossing right over it there, buddy.
I'm glad you guys trust me on that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I read it first, Ken, no, I'm kidding.
That's what your 40 years in engineering gets you. So what'd you say, John, 124?
Yeah, we can go to section 6.
Oh, yeah.
That's when we get some next red points open for discussion of the board.
Yeah. This is another thing that Ken and I discussed, but there's this language here that says, all open channels, natural or man-made, will be enclosed with a storm sewer when an area is developed. This policy will apply even when the open water course is located on a property line. I don't know why you'd want to enclose a natural or man-made open channel. I think they convey water more efficiently. I mean, I think as soon as you enclose them and put them in a pipe, you start experiencing problems with blockage, depending on the size of the pipe. But
Right.
open water courses, I would think generally should be preferred. But I certainly wouldn't mandate that we close them in and put pipes in.
Yeah, the only time I would see something like that is if it's along a roadway and you need to put a sidewalk in. Sometimes I want to
Right.
put a
Yeah.
pipe in and put the sidewalk over.
Otherwise, why would you, I don't know why you'd do that. Ken, any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not sure why this was ever put in there. We like open channels. You know, they conduct more water than a pipe does. They have access to the channel, the entire length of it, where pipes have to have a structure to let water in.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I agree with you guys. I don't know why we have this in here.
All right, so if we strike this language, go, Paul?
Ken, I have a question, and I worry that this could be used to leave open swales at the edges of our subdivisions, as he was just mentioning, for sidewalks and that kind of thing. So why put storms in if you could just put ditches along the road?
Well, maybe have specific sizes, if the ditch carries X amount of cubic feet, you leave it alone. If it's, if it's a 2 cubic feet per second, or something, really small, then maybe you do enclose it.
So, or leave the language to enclose it and they could ask for a waiver. I don't want shortcuts encouraged, I guess.
Right.
In development. And we have ditches along 93rd right now that we're going to have to try to figure out how to put a path in there. It's, you know, I don't want to encourage that type of new development. So that's my only concern.
Maybe you could have something in there that says, open channels are allowed only at the discretion of the plan commission. You know, that way you have the ability to say, we want to put sidewalks in there, so you have to close that thing up.
Okay, does that sound good? Yeah, because I could just see it along the property line, like 93rd, they will want to close it and put a sidewalk on top of it.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, but if it's running through the middle of a property, you know, it'd be nice to have a stream or ditch or something in your backyard, I guess.
Well, take a look at Walden Clearing. All their detention basins on the north side of 93rd Avenue go through a culvert and then into an open ditch.
Wait, say that again, Ken?
I would suggest not putting language in that gives discretion to the plan commission in this standard. Again, I think that strays from the idea of a concrete standard. The developer needs to know what the rules are when the plat is prepared and being submitted, and leaving anything to the discretion of the plan commission deviates from that.
Well, I think requiring everything to be piped is a mistake. I think that we need to encourage open channels wherever we can. I think it just handles stormwater more effectively. If you've got to put a sidewalk in an area, then you close it in, you put a pipe in, but,
I don't know, it can be a trick bag. You know, Walden Clearing, you know, it's open field where that discharge of those ponds are. That's open field now. It's not a big deal. But like Paul said, if it's in someone's backyard, if you go north of Walden Clearing behind, west of Klein Avenue, we had those folks in here, you know, screaming and yelling about their banks being washed in. So I think we gotta be careful with this, you know, having open banks or enclosing it, or I think there's a time when you need to enclose it, and I think there's a time where you leave it open.
Is this somewhere where we can do the should and shall, so they should enclose it with a pipe they shall enclose it with a pipe in areas that require sidewalks? And they should, and then just leave it at that? Because isn't that what we're talking about? The only time you would enclose a natural man-made channel is if some sort of infrastructure needs to be put on top of it. Because we're not talking about anywhere else. So they should enclose it if public infrastructure needs to be put on top, or some sort of term like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
yeah.
Because it says located on a property line. Well, I guess they'd all be located on a property line. Do we want to take this out for now, or do you guys want to chew on it, you and Ken, and knowing what?
Well, I mean, Paul makes a good point, that you can always ask for a waiver from this, if you leave the language the way it is now. Because we don't necessarily want everything to be an open channel, but,
No.
but it isn't. You know, when you're designing storm sewers, you're designing piped systems for the most part, but to me, there's no good reason to eliminate all open channels. I think that's a mistake. I'm trying to think of a specific example where, I mean, you might have a legal drain going through a subdivision. You're not gonna make somebody enclose that.
Right. Well, St.
Even a
John
tribute.
Ditch.
St. John Ditch,
We wouldn't
yeah.
enclose that.
No.
Just
No, even a tributary, you're typically not gonna do that. When I think of a tributary like the one that runs parallel to, from 41 to the west, over to, is that West Creek, John?
West Creek, yeah.
On the
Bull
south
Run.
side of the
Yeah.
shrine?
That's on the north side of the shrine.
There's two of them, there's one on
There's
the
a west
south.
side.
West Creek's on the north side of the
I
shrine.
know, but the tributary that runs from 41 over to West Creek,
Oh,
that's
yeah,
on
yeah.
the south side of the shrine.
South side, yes.
Yeah, and you certainly wouldn't
Wouldn't close
enclose
that.
that.
No.
But our language here is saying if that were developed as a subdivision, it would have to be enclosed. So there's got to be a better way to say this, because I certainly wouldn't envision enclosing that and putting in, some huge 72-inch pipe.
Unless the development warrants it, where,
Yeah, so
I,
but we go on to have some open water course design information right here. So why do we have design information, standards, when we're saying you can't have them? To me, it doesn't make sense that we're saying you can't have them, but if you have them, here's the design standard. I don't understand why we would do that. And I agree, they're gonna be necessary in some cases, and pipe systems are gonna be preferred in other situations, and I just don't wanna mandate that you have to fill them all in and turn them into pipe.
Well, if you're going to keep all that that's in red, if you keep that in there, you almost have to keep all the paragraphs that you have struck out.
Exactly, Ken, yes.
Yeah, and if you look, this says, the second paragraph says a 2-year fixed design would require a 72-inch pipe, but in the design standards, in the section next, just below this, it says that the design has to be for a 10-year storm.
Okay, so, and I agree with what you're saying. If we're gonna keep this language in red, then we have to keep the language that I'm saying we need to strike. I just think we should allow them. I don't think we should mandate that they all be closed.
no, I don't think so either.
Well, also, we've had this ordinance since when, 2010
Two.
or so, maybe?
Two.
I forget what you said the last time this was changed, but I don't remember anybody ever coming in and asking for a waiver from this particular part of this subdivision control ordinance.
Any other comments from the board? Recommendations?
I guess I'd have to just read it again and see, but
So if we left that verbiage in there, well, no, I mean, they haven't been doing it, so Ken, you're telling me they haven't been closing it up in time I've been here.
Well, I mentioned Walden Clearing a little while ago. When that came before us, I didn't even bring this particular part of the subdivision control ordinance up because it just makes more sense to keep that as an open channel.
Yeah, I
So-
think we need to get rid of the language that says that they shall all be enclosed.
right.
Just create the standards for an open water course and be done with it. So they're allowed in some cases.
Or could possibly be enclosed, or, I don't know.
What happens on a property border where they have to put some sort of water channel on the exterior of a subdivision, and they need to put sidewalks? Would we require them to enclose that and put the sidewalks in? Because we don't want a sidewalk right next to some sort of ditch, I wouldn't imagine, or...
Well, and Walden may be an example of that, where they've got to put sidewalk on Klein Avenue, So there was a roadside ditch there that has to be filled in order to do that, I think. Ken, does that sound right on Walden, on Klein?
Yeah, I think the sidewalk on the west side of Klein, I think there was a shallow roadside swale there. That, I think they handled that with grading and some piping. I know there's piping that goes to the detention basins.
So our sidewalk requirement would sort of mandate some of this stuff being closed in or piped.
Yeah, if they have to put a sidewalk along a road where there's a ditch, they're gonna have to fill in the ditch, put in a pipe, and put the sidewalk over the top.
So the only time it would stay open is if we give them a waiver for sidewalk, potentially.
Yeah, like, I don't know, Ken, for example, the preserve itself, they're not filling in the ditch on the south side of 93rd when they develop that, are they? That's gonna remain an open roadside ditch, isn't it?
Right, yeah, that's part of Bull Run.
Yeah.
But is there sidewalks?
I don't think so.
Not along the entire frontage, no, because there's not lots along the entire frontage. Trying to think about like White Oak, where the preserve is. There's a.
I mean, they left most of the ditch line there from where like that wet area is and
Yeah.
along where they put the bike path to 101st.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think we should allow them,
Right.
create a standard for them, and it hasn't been a problem for
Right.
us.
Yeah, and roadside swales, you know, if it's a rural cross-section road, you don't need to enclose them.
No.
That's just,
You're asking for trouble.
you're asking for trouble.
Yeah.
Okay,
Now, maybe in someone's backyard, you know, and you got a swale that's significant, you know, somewhat significant water, maybe enclose it, you know?
Yeah.
But along a road, we got a rural cross-section road, I think you leave them alone.
but if they have curb and gutter.
Well, unless you have curb and gutter,
Curb and gutter,
then you enclose it,
Yeah.
yeah.
just gotta make sure no waiver. All right. So the board is okay with the decision to remove the first two sentences?
Well, and then
Or we could
those
discuss
paragraphs below would be eliminated too, if you're going to eliminate the language in the first paragraph.
And then just make sure, if they do require to pipe it based on sidewalk, do we have requirements of the size of the pipe then?
Oh, yeah.
If we're taking it out here? Okay,
Yeah.
very good.
Yeah, it has to allow for the same flow that it did as an open ditch.
Okay.
And then that also gets rid of the discrepancy that Ken was talking about, 2-year versus 10-year storm.
I like he went from a 50 to a 100-year on drainage.
Yeah.
Seems like those hundreds are coming more often.
Yeah, boy, doesn't it? The next language was on 132. There's some language about a low-flow concrete channel in detention ponds, and that's not even allowed anymore, so.
Rick, just real quick, on page 131, you put Y by tank storage, or somebody put Y
Oh,
by
yeah.
tank storages.
We talk about tank storage and that their pumped releases will be allowed to a storm sewer, but not to open ditches or swales. Again, I don't know why you would do that.
Right.
Okay.
Ken, any comment there?
Yeah, you know, the Dairy Queen has tank storage under there for their detention, and they pump it into the highway swale.
Yeah, I just don't know why you would restrict it to a storm sewer. So my recommendation is that we get rid of this language too. Is people okay with that?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, I can't wait for the next section. Grading plans.
Yeah, again, I got rid of this language about a concrete low-flow gutter because it's not,
They
it's no
can't
longer
do it
allowed,
anymore.
right? And then, this is stuff that John was talking about before. Ken suggested we put this language in about referencing the right documentation for design criteria based on Bulletin 71 or the latest NOAA reports, the industry recognized standards, all of that. Ken made changes to the slope chart.
Yeah. Increase the slope.
Yeah, so Ken made all of those recommended changes.
Okay, Ken, why are we increasing the slope? Am I reading that right?
Which section?
On
are you
page
talking
139, runoff, am I reading that? Is that slopes?
That table, Ken, that you,
On 139.
right here. Ah, darn it, sorry. The runoff coefficient table, number 1.
Taking a 0.3%? Or not 0.3, yeah.
Oh, this
Yeah,
is the
yeah.
runoff coefficient, so the runoff of an unimproved area is 0.3, not 0.2, is that what that was, Ken?
Right. St. John is all clay soils for the most part. Even in a flat grassy plain with clay underneath it, you're going to have more runoff than 2%.
Yeah, that's not the slope,
That's not the slope, I'm
That's
getting
the
that
allowable water that seeps
Gotcha.
into the ground.
Filtration, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Trying to speak a game I don't know how to play.
I labeled it wrong on that sheet anyway, John, so, we didn't change these, drawings,
Or not.
We could probably go to 152, Rick.
okay?
This thing. You did have some stuff on 147, some green.
Rick, can you go back one illustration?
This one, or keep going?
Yeah, it's on 141, this one right here. There's the concrete low flow
Oh,
channel
yeah.
that's not allowed anymore shown on there.
Yeah, so we need to get rid of, okay, got it. What'd you say, John? Yeah, 150, what'd you say, 152?
Yeah, and the only other thing you had in green was on page, but it looked like those were all crossed out, so I don't know if we need to address that. That was on page 147. There were some additions, but then you crossed them out, so
Okay.
unless if that's not gonna change, we're gonna just need to go to 152.
Okay, yeah, well, that starts the impact fee, the park impact fee ordinance, and the amount changed when the ordinance was changed a year or so ago. It's now $1,868.01. On page 156, it looks like. Yeah, 1868.01, so I just made that change. That's the only change in that section. And the next thing isn't until page 168. Really,
Jumpy, huh?
yeah, just can't control it. Come on.
It might be this, Jason, maybe control the setting on it. There might be something. How about the bottom of the mouse? Is it dirty?
Okay, here's that repeating of the building permit language. No building permit shall be issued until all infrastructure improvements are installed, inspected, and approved. including street signage. The exception to the rule are that streetlights don't have to be in place prior to the issuance. So that's just a repeat of the language. Page 170 is just about who the developer has to contact when inspection is ready. That's the Public Works Department, not Building and Planning. And this is just my 2 cents. I've been talking to some of the council members and Craig Phillips about the need to have a public improvements inspector. John and I have talked about that. We haven't had one, John, since Tom Reeder of about 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Well, he stopped doing that even before, when he took over the building commissioner in around 09 or 10.
Oh, okay.
I want to say he stopped doing purely public improvements and he focused on the building, and then that's when we kind of got away from all that.
So we do some spot inspections, some
With
proof
Public Works
rollings.
guys, yeah.
Yeah, with a couple Public Works guys, but we really, with the development we have going on, we should have somebody that's bird dogging these
Subdivisions, yeah.
subdivisions.
Testing it.
And we haven't done
Testing
that
the
since the
sewers.
early
You do professionally,
2000s.
don't you?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, you have, yeah.
Yep.
And it's,
Testing the sewers, water mains, proof rolling, string lining, yeah.
all
You should
that.
have,
We should have somebody to do that, and hopefully we can find the money to do that. That's a Public Works.
can you charge a fee for the from the developer? You know, 10% of construction costs or 5%?
Well,
For
part
each
of-
development,
Part of that fee that we do charge could go to
yeah.
support that position.
You know,
yeah.
in addition, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. That's a good.
that's what
idea.
Mokina did in
Yeah.
Illinois. I think it was a percentage of construction costs.
That's a good idea, Bob. Yeah.
I thought the 2% developer fee was supposed to cover things like inspection.
It can, that's what I just said, Ken. It can cover part of that cost, yeah. Yeah.
Well, maybe if you're running short on that, maybe you can bump that up to 2.5% or something.
Yeah, it's something to consider. That's actually something that I'm tracking now. I'm tracking what a developer pays versus what we're paying out for review, to try to see what that is, because until this year, I didn't get the invoices like from Ken, from Haas and Associate. That was handled by somebody else, but now I'm getting those so that I can track it. I want to see how we're doing with that. That next comment, 172, was,
So someone from the Public Works goes out, so no one from the Public Work goes out there now to review any of this?
they do, but
They do.
They
more of a
just spot check, John.
They just spot-
It's, you know, they're doing, the one guy is, and I'm sure you probably seen him around, the locate guy that throws the flags when you call to do a pool or whatever. So he's doing that, and then he takes, an hour and checks on the sewer crew, and then he goes back to doing, so it's more like a secondary,
Okay.
responsibility for the guys there,
Yeah.
as opposed to just being somebody's primary job, day in and day out, to
Gotcha.
be out there 40 hours a week.
yeah, we used to have, what was that vehicle we had, John?
Yeah, because when Tom Reeder was doing it in the early 2000s, he had a mule, like an off-road golf cart type thing, and he would drive out, and follow along as they're laying pipe and water main and stuff like that. And now it's like we kind of spot check them as they're doing their own checks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is just a simple comment in the last paragraph on this page that soil erosion control is to be maintained, this says, currently by the subdivider or lot owner for 2 years from the date of acceptance. Fact of the matter is, soil erosion and control is to be maintained in perpetuity by the lot owner. So, just got rid of that. I propose to get rid of that language. Page 174, almost there. Again, this is digital copies of things that we're gonna need, not paper copies. And that the digital copy of the as-built drawings shall be submitted to both Building and Planning and Public Works Department, using and this was Ken's suggestion, the state planar coordinate system. And the last thing was on page 187, and that just had to do with fines and penalties if people don't comply with the ordinance. And we had language in here that we had to change. Did I pass it? Let's see. This language here that's struck out, such fine shall inure to the town. We can't fine somebody and collect the fine of more than $250 locally. If we write a ticket for more, or a fine for more than $250, it has to go through the county court system. That's just something we have to handle. We got dinged on it in an audit recently, so we can fine somebody up to $5,000 for a violation of this ordinance, but we can only collect locally up to $250. Then it has to go to the Lake County Court. We still get the fine back to us, but it has to go through the county court system, so.
So we're just gonna change it to 250?
No.
Oh, we'll leave it.
No, we're gonna leave it as is. I'm just eliminating the language that says
Okay.
such fine to inure to the town.
Yeah.
Because it makes it sound like we actually do get the money, but it makes it sound like we can write a $5,000 ticket and have them paid at the clerk's office, and we can't.
You can't, you gotta go through.
Yeah, Donna's familiar with that in
Lake
her
County
department. It's limited to $250 fines, so. No, we're not gonna change the language, just get rid of those few words.
Can you do 5 $250 fines?
Oh, yeah, you could, for every day that a fine,
Yeah.
a
No,
condition exists.
5 in 1 hour.
Yeah, well, no, but daily, yes, yeah.
Rick, could you just go back to 147, and then in the meantime, I'm just gonna ask some questions. So on June 3rd, we have 2 public hearings, and then would we go through this zoning control ordinance just like we did right now?
I don't plan to do this again.
No.
This kind of review again.
So how do we do a public hearing?
Anybody that wants to ask questions can ask questions, but I plan to get all of you, a cleaned up version of this, probably yet this week, so you have time to look at it, but
Do we get our, so those that come and want to comment on this, so we don't have to provide them with with the changes that are going on? We don't have to provide them
Well,
at the meeting saying, okay, here are the changes to the ordinance, subdivision control ordinance, so then they can respond to. We're just saying, here, we made changes.
they can come and get this same bullet point list that you've got. I'm gonna clean it up. But the public hearing that we've advertised says that the information is available at my office, that anybody can come and get it before the public hearing.
Yeah, we don't need to review
Oh,
all this again.
I'm just, I mean, it's good, if we had it, I'm just want to make, maybe Adam.
Could be
We
here
would
all
be here
night.
for,
Yeah.
absolutely.
We wouldn't be
because-
going home.
Yeah.
But I just want to make sure that we're okay, or that's okay to do it this way, just saying, changes have been made, you had the opportunity to review it, the board has gone through it diligently, at their study session.
Yeah. Adam,
Guys
any
can comment on
comment
it?
about that?
Yes, Mr. President, I believe that would be correct. What Rick laid out, the notice will notify the public that they are welcome to review the specific changes that set forth in the draft that he will prepare, that it would be available at the town hall for inspection. And so at the public hearing next month, it would not be necessary to go through the items like we have. Certainly, there may be people who might ask specific questions about certain items or might have comments about certain items, but at a public hearing, I mean, again, it simply allows them to perhaps ask questions which may be answered, and to make comments about those changes. So I think Rick has this in hand.
Okay, I just didn't want to make sure that we're required to go through bullet point by bullet point on each item. Okay, perfect.
No, that won't be necessary.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I was just thinking, I'm thinking time going, oh, man. So, So just 147, I know I told you to go over it, but I just want to make sure there's green, so that means it was added, but then it looks like there's a green line through it, meaning we're taking it out. I just want to verify that.
We are
because-
taking that out. It just wasn't in the first document I sent you.
Okay.
That wasn't
It's-
crossed out in the first document I sent you.
Okay, very good. I just wanted to make sure I'm not okay.
How about any of our folks that joined us remotely? Any comments on this, or have we beat that horse to death?
I'm good.
Board members online, any comments, questions before we adjourn?
None at this time.
On the June 3rd meeting, are we going to do some remotely as well? Or are we going to, because are we adding, well, that's something we could talk offline. If there's any other comments or questions from the board, if not, I'll adjourn. Rick, any comments? Nope. All right. Everyone, thanks for coming out and hanging on first along. I'll adjourn.
Second.
No. Sorry.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, thank you.